the Director of Development. Welcome to the state of My Life, My Choice, supporting exploited youth in today's climate. The last time that we were together for a briefing about what we are doing at My Life, My Choice, it was spring, and we had been recently struck by the pandemic. Since then, at My Life, My Choice, we have innovated in ways previously unimaginable. Today, we want to share some of the realities on the ground. We have assembled a great panel and hope that you will leave this event feeling more informed about the commercial sexual exploitation of children. Before I turn it over to our executive director and moderator for today, I want to remind you to follow us on social media and attend some of our past events by visiting our link tree. It's an awesome platform that provides you a menu of My Life, My Choice options. The link will pop up in the chat. With that being said, we appreciate you. Thank you for attending. And I now present our Executive Director and co-founder, Lisa Goldblatt Race.
Thanks so much, Nancy. I really appreciate you setting the stage, and we really appreciate all of you being here. Watching folks put their information within the chat and seeing you from all over the country is really, really exciting and heartening. The last 8 months have been challenging, but knowing we have a community like this makes all the difference in the world. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my dear work wife, Audrey Morrissey.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank everyone who's attending. I notice we have people from all over the country, and that really, really excites me because we really do have a exciting program. And I'm Audrey Morrissey, the Associate Director of My Life, My Choice, and also National Survivor Leadership Director here at My Life, My Choice. And again, I'm really excited to be here, but without further ado, a dear friend of mine who we asked to present, her name is Shea Rhodes, who I do consider a friend as well. Shea Rhodes has dedicated her career to combating gender-based violence. As co-founder and director of the Institute to Address Commercial Sexual Exploitation, and that's the CSEC Institute at Villanova Law, Ms. Rhodes works with and for victims and survivors of commercial sexual exploitation. She is the statewide expert on Pennsylvania laws related to sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation. And she is a host of other things, but due to time frame, and she'll be speaking, she'll be better able to tell you more about herself. But we're excited to have you, Shay, so welcome. And before I turn it over to you, Shay, I want to throw out one question for our poll. And that question is, have you seen the hashtag Save the Children on social media? And so we'll give folks a couple of minutes to
Just want to confirm that poll showed up somewhere. Did it? Yes, we just don't see it. Okay, just making sure.
I see it.
Okay. So someone who does see it, let me know when the results come out, because I do not. Yeah. Okay. Are the results up yet? Results are shared. So 52% of you have seen that hashtag Save the Children. And we're going to hear a lot more about that right now as I turn it over to Shay. The past year has seen an incredible proliferation of conspiracy theories related to human trafficking. And it's drawn a lot of attention to the issue of human trafficking. And there's many who would argue like any attention is good attention. But I'm going to turn it over to our dear colleague who knows so much about this. Shay, can you tell us what's the harm in these theories?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Just absolutely thrilled to be here. And Lisa, to work alongside of you and Audrey is one of the highlights of, how we all who work in this national space. It's just truly one of the highlights of what I do here out of Villanova, which is right outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, if you guys are unfamiliar with our location. So just to summarize this conspiracy theory issue, public awareness and activism are absolutely critical to ending sex trafficking. However, when sensationalized imagery and rhetoric are used as a means to increase awareness, it leads to the spread of damaging misinformation and harmful falsities about sex trafficking. I know that here at our institute, we're very mindful of our words that we choose to use when it comes to advocating for policy and legislative changes in anything that we write on our website. And we're also very concerned about imagery that's used, especially, when it involves chains and crime scene tape and ropes and, all kinds of misinformation. And I know that everyone hears, well, we have to raise awareness some way. It is necessary that awareness campaigns use credible information from legitimate anti-trafficking organizations. That's what's so important. And in doing so, we diminish the risk of real survivor stories being overlooked and ignored. When asked to comment today on QAnon, because that's who has really co-opted this hashtag Save the Children today, and other harmful conspiracies surrounding anti-trafficking that have really come onto my radar starting back in July. I started getting emails and direct messages on my social media and screenshots of social media from, my friends, my colleagues, my family asking, what is this? Is this true? Is this true? And I turned to really engaging with the survivor community nationally to find out how they were responding to it. And although I don't personally know Christy Croft, I believe that her quote in a media piece that was put out on October 5th in the Insider really captured and does capture what I'm hearing from survivors all over the US. She said, as a survivor, when I see it, I feel exploited again. I feel like my trauma and the trauma of people like me is being exploited for purposes other than ending trafficking. It's really infuriating when you have survivors who have lived experience and are working full-time in this field and have helped tons and tons of survivors saying, actually, that's not quite right. And you have someone with no experience and no professional expertise with a whole day of internet research on unverified sites telling you, you don't know your own life. So when the realities of sex trafficking are acknowledged, we can rightfully direct our attention and assistance to victims and survivors, the majority of whom have experiences that substantially differ from those depicted in widely posted internet memes. And I think that the dangers of spreading human trafficking myths and conspiracies and all of these dangerous narratives are really and truly delegitimizing the real resources. We know that hotlines, including Polaris's hotline, the human trafficking hotline, are being clogged with false calls as well as threats. Money is being diverted from legitimate anti-trafficking organizations, and other resources are being diverted as well. And it's normalizing this concept of saving and rescuing trafficking victims, which anyone who has a savior complex should not be engaged in this work anyway. Anyone who's using that rescue narrative or that rescue rhetoric is making this work about themselves and instead of about serving others, which is what we do. Anyone in this field who is rescuing are the survivors. They're doing the work themselves. All of that happens internally, and those of us who are allies in this fight can only provide the important resources and skills and walk along survivors as they are healing. They're the ones healing, they're rescuing internally within themselves. And silencing the voices of survivors is truly the most dangerous aspect of all of these. So what can we as an anti-trafficking community do to help? And I know that My Life, My Choice is involved in all of these initiatives. We need to be vigilant about the source and credibility of the information that we choose to post and share. We need to make sure that we are only sharing resources from legitimate anti-trafficking organizations like My Life, My Choice. We need to make sure that we're reporting false information on social media. And have conversations about this issue with your friends, with your loved one, with your colleagues, with your coworkers, and question every single thing that you read on social media and do your research. There's a hashtag that we engaged in a campaign to delegitimize all of these myths that were out there, right? To sort of recapture the narrative and bring it back to the truth. And it's hashtag trafficking truths. And I think it's so important. And I just want to really quickly run through the 7 myths and the truths attached to them. So the first myth out there is that trafficking victims are always kidnapped and held captive. The truth is that victims are more often trafficked by someone that they know and trust. The second myth, the crime of sex trafficking is always a person A selling a person B for sex. And what we know the truth is that third-party facilitators such as hotels and websites can also be held criminally and civilly liable for their involvement in trafficking. The third myth, trafficking only happens to children overseas and requires moving, traveling, or transporting a child across national or state borders. The truth is that sex trafficking happens all over the United States, and victims can be trafficked without transportation of movement of any kind. Fourth, prostitution is a choice. Truth, prostitution is a choiceless choice, and we know that most prostituted individuals choose to enter prostitution because of poverty, homelessness, drug addiction, domestic or childhood abuse, and other traumatic hardships. Also, there's no such thing as a child prostitute. They're a victim of child abuse. I'm now on to number 5. No one I know buys sex. Well, we do know that buyers come from all demographics, and we need to normalize the conversation about that very population of people who are driving the market for traffickers to make money. 6th, directly on point, sensationalism helps raise awareness. The truth is, an awareness campaign based on credible information from legitimate anti-trafficking organizations is more successful at assisting real victims and survivors. And finally, that Epstein, he was a conspiracy last year too. Actually, the truth is that the media has been covering Epstein sexually exploiting children for well over a decade. And so when there's little nuggets of truth in there, that's when people think that they're helping. The reality is you need to be a critical thinker. You need to consistently vet every source that you come from. Go to the local area, check 2 legitimate organizations and 2 legitimate news sources before you start disseminating information. Lisa and Audrey, I'm so grateful to be here with you guys today and your team. Sorry if I took up a little more time than needed.
Shay, that was outstanding and clear and extremely helpful. I would imagine there are folks that still have more questions. Please put them in the chat. We're going to have time at the end for all of our panelists to be able to go back and answer. But thank you so much for sharing what you know and what is so incredibly clear. So we've kind of laid out what isn't true. And Shay has done a great job of contrasting that with the reality. And we're going to bring that reality home to My Life, My Choice. And you'll get to hear from some of our incredible team about what we're seeing day to day here in Massachusetts. And we'd love to hear from you in the chat of how transferable that is to where you are all over the country. So I'm going to begin with our incredible clinical director, Tina Valila, who's been working at My Life, My Choice for over 6 years. So Tina, could you please paint for us a picture of who are the mentees at My Life, My Choice. First, can you start by saying what's the average age that young people are referred to us?
Yeah, so currently the average age of the referrals that our youth that have being referred to My Life, My Choice is 15. We've received referrals for youth as young as 11. What we know also is that the average age of first exploitation is 14.
Okay, and how do these young people identify in terms of their gender?
Yeah, and so one of the things that I think is really unique about My Life, My Choice is that we do serve boys, girls, transgender youth, however you identify. We will work with you, and that's what we say at the time of assessment, which is great. And so currently, I want to say it's 96% of the youth are coming in identifying as female, but what I would add is that even though this is what our numbers are or data that we have for the past fiscal year, is that doesn't mean that cis boys are not being exploited, and that it's just around identification and how why they're not being identified. And I think that that they are just as vulnerable. It just looks different. And so I think that the goal really is to continue to kind of fight and educate and do prevention work around better identifying these kids.
Got it. And in terms of race and ethnicity?
Yep. So I think this is no surprise to most, but I think I want to say it's like 67% of the youth that we currently serve are youth of color, meaning more specifically, I just want to lift up that youth of colors, more specifically African-American, Black, Latino, Latinx youth are at a disproportionate risk for exploitation for a number of reasons. And I think some of this, again, like this is no surprise to many, is that with these youth of color specifically, they've already been at risk or victimized in many other ways, whether that's socioeconomically, institutional racism, systemic racism, complex trauma. So I think that, it's just an added sort of vulnerability that we're seeing specifically with these youth of color.
I appreciate you lifting up that piece around disproportionality. It feels, it is so extraordinarily important that we acknowledge that as a trafficking community for all of us across the country, and where, as Tina said, where racial injustice is kind of central to the commercial sex industry. Also for these young people, what do we know about their involvement with child welfare? Here in Massachusetts, that's our Department of Children and Families.
Sure. So the majority, I want to say close to 96% are involved with the child welfare system in Mass DCF. And I think, one of the things that this is not a surprise is that, again, DCF, our child welfare system here, does support and work with the most vulnerable of the vulnerable, whether it's children or families, us being serving children. And so we're getting the majority of the referrals from DCF specifically because they're, even with COVID, they're consistently working with these youth. And so they're seeing firsthand the exploitation and are able to make the referrals from their perspective.
And there's another kind of piece that I want to lift up, and that's our young people that are connected in some way or involved in some way with a gang. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so over the last year, we've seen a 36% increase with youth that are gang involved or gang identified. And I think one thing to kind of be aware of is, and I think they're, again, I'd like to think that everybody here knows that these kids are not like, quote, bad kids, or, that this is that their involvement with gangs is no more a choice than the way that they are exploited by the gangs. I think when we think about gangs, they create something that a lot of these youth don't have, and create a sort of false sense of family connection. Maybe they're able to provide in a way financially that can seem a means to an end for a lot of them. And I think that they use, again, all of the vulnerabilities that we've listed, whether it's socioeconomic trauma, whatever it is, to kind of prey on these vulnerabilities and end up recruiting them. And so what it might be is, creating a relationship that, again, is not one that is, it's a self-centered sort of, we're going to use these girls in ways, whether it's moving drugs for them and then saying, okay, well, like, you're my girlfriend or whatever it is, and then just keep pushing it. And then at that time, the youth are sort of lulled into sort of a false sense of security or relationship with these people.
Got it. And I also want to lift up young people who identify as LGBTQIA+, right? And how the vulnerability of that community. Can you talk about that in terms of the young people we serve?
Yeah, and so about a third of the youth that we serve currently identify within the LGBTQ community. And I think one of the things I was thinking about last night is, we've gotten more specific and intentional about really asking this question at the time of assessment, and how we can better serve and understand and sort of better serve these kids in terms of what their specific needs are. And so thinking about that number of 1/3 of the kids, why is that number so low or so high? And so one of the things that I think may impact that number is sort of their experience in the world with whether it's homophobia or systemic abuse or any of those kinds of things, and where they are in terms of readiness to share. And so I think that we learn more about them as the mentors continue to work with them. But right now, the numbers that we're coming in, it's about 33 to a third of the youth that identify within the LGBT community.
Thank you. And within the state of Massachusetts, and knowing we have folks from all over the country, is this
Sure.
just an urban issue? Where are our kids coming from?
No. So this can happen anywhere to anyone. And I think that's like one of the biggest myths. And Shay, I appreciate all of the myth busting that you did earlier, because this is so on point with what we hear all the time. And I think, when people ask me, like, what do you do for work? And you say, oh, you get a lot of those conspiracy theories, or, oh, it's like a truck that pulls up and yanks this kid in. And not to say that that never happens, right? Mm-hmm. But the kids that we are seeing are from various communities, different kinds of settings. So we're seeing big cities, Boston, we're seeing those sort of gateway cities just out of the major cities, the surrounding areas and towns. We're seeing kids in suburbia. We're seeing kids in, from rural areas, and it really doesn't matter where. So if you're familiar with Massachusetts, some of the towns that we're seeing kids from, Newton, Belmont, Wayland, like these are suburban towns, wealthy, but we're seeing all sorts of kids from all different kinds of communities for sure.
Tina, thank you so much. You've done a really exceptional job of giving us a picture of these young people are, and of feeding my early 90s Oprah fantasies that I once had of moderating. So thank you for both those things. And I'm next going to turn it over to Sheryl Murrell, who is a senior survivor mentor with My Life, My Choice for she's been mentoring with us for over 7 years. She's also a prevention specialist. She's brilliant in this work and beloved by the young people that she cares for. Sheryl, you've met so many incredible young people who've experienced commercial sexual exploitation over the years, and I would love your thoughts on what this reality looks like. When you and I talked, it sounded like the best way to do this is to begin by talking about one young person, and I will call her Laura. So when you first met Laura, what was she like?
Thank you, Lisa. So when I first met Laura, she was a beautiful, sweet 14-year-old girl who was looking for love. She moved to the US from Haiti. She had been exploited in Haiti and then came to the US, where she then was exploited by her father. When I met her, she was still living with dad. And this is common among the kids we care for, who often have a lifetime of abuse before they meet a pimp outside the family.
Okay, and how did you learn what was going on with her? What was going on in the family?
I actually was doing a prevention group at the high school she attended, and she was referred into the group by the school, who knew something was going on but didn't know exactly what. And at first she was really resistant to the group, but then I told her my story and she started to open up.
Mm.
She had never told anyone before what had happened to her and what was still happening to her. I filed a report with DCF, which is our Child Protective Service System, and she was removed from her father's house.
And so you met her at 14, and how long have you been working with her? Or how,
So I've been working with Laura for over 7 years.
okay, so for this whole time. And what does her recovery look like? Is it kind of the way it happens in the made for TV movies where it's really linear and it's in one direction, or is it more like 3 steps forward and 2 steps back? What has that been like?
Yeah, so when during the time, there were many times when she went missing. She was in and out of residential programs. She once again was exploited by a pimp who promised her love. And um, excuse me, he told her everything she wanted to hear and took care of her. At least that's what she felt like. She felt like there was support there. And even though he made her have sex with men, he was also telling her, I love you and I got your back. What she always wanted to hear from her mother and her father, but she never did. She was looking for that love because she had never received it. She was used to someone saying, I love you, and also abusing you. Sometimes it's easier to just go with what you know.
Mm, okay. And how has your mentoring relationship been part of her healing?
So, the relationship between a survivor and mentor is really important. It is a significant relationship because the mentor is the one person that the mentee can connect with. This is someone who understands me, who gets it, who has, gone through a similar situation that they have. Because of that, she felt like she could trust me. I was the one person who showed up for her and didn't give up on her. I never had a me when I was growing up and when I was her age. And the difference is she has a me. She has someone there who now is in a place of stability and is helping young people.
Mm-hmm.
The mentees they look up to that, and it brings them hope. The impact of our mentoring program was actually proven to work. In a 3-year study funded by the National Institute of Health, it was found that our mentoring program reduces commercial sexual exploitation, along with substance use, arrest, and also reduces depression, which tells me that, we all know that survivor mentoring, it truly works.
And where is Laura today?
So, Laura is an exceptional young lady. She's in college. She's also working in a group home with youth who have similar life experiences to her. As a mentor, I help build a bridge back to our case management services, our summer jobs program, and our leadership core, along with our therapy services. Laura took advantage of everything and made real connections throughout the program. And I believe and I know we are her family, and everyone in the program is her family as well.
And is there anything else you want folks to know about and really understand about exploited youth from your perspective?
Yes. So I just want everyone to know that these are young people that we see on the street every single day. They're youth that have struggled. They are individuals who want to have a better childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And, I believe that we're here to teach them the way and show them the way. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Charel. And I think what you've just shared really kind of embodies what Shay was sharing earlier on. Like, if we want to understand who exploited youth are, we have to go to the youth themselves, but also to the young people who care for them and are in their lives every day, that see both the challenges and the resiliency, which you absolutely do. So thanks, Charel. Next, I'm going to turn it to Olivia Angood-Hardy, who is our fabulous youth services manager, overseeing all of our case management services and our group work. She came to My Life, My Choice as an intern almost 3 years ago, and we would not let her go. So Olivia, I'm going to turn it over to you and your particular perspective. Olivia, what is intensive case management and how does it work in collaboration with survivor mentoring?
Thanks, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. Case management is an additional support service that we offer at My Life, My Choice. So for mentees who are already receiving that one-on-one survivor mentorship, they can also get support with case management needs. So things like housing, food insecurity, education, career planning, finding a job. The list really goes on, but the way we've developed case management at My Life, My Choice is so that it's unique and it's specialized and it's intensive, and it works hand in hand with the survivor mentors. I think what we see and what we know is that all of these things that we're talking about, like housing and finding a job, can bring up a lot for a young person who's been through exploitation. So for example, someone who has been exploited and sold by a pimp might have a very complex relationship getting a new job and now managing money and getting a paycheck. So it's all tied together. And our approach with case management is really to work hand in hand with the mentor and take the lead of the mentor. And I think one of our mentees actually put it best, who's in our leadership program. She said that their mentor is someone who helps them recover and focus on their inner feelings, while their case manager is someone who helps them navigate the outside world stuff.
It's perfectly said. And I'm going to stop myself before I ask you the next question and just encourage folks to continue to put questions into the chat as they come up. We would definitely want to have a dialogue with you. Olivia, what have you seen? You know, the last 8 months have been challenging for everybody on this call. What does it look like for the young people we've served?
Yeah, so I think this pandemic has hit all of our mentees and their families particularly hard in every way. We know that COVID in general has been most devastating for our communities of color and lower income families. And like Tina was mentioning, while this not all of our mentees are from these communities, the vast majority are. And like Sheryl was also mentioning, exploitation, it happens when traffickers are taking advantage of a young person's need for love and connection, as well as basic needs like housing and shelter. So while these vulnerabilities have always existed for our young people, they're particularly heightened during a pandemic.
Yeah. And Charel spoke about how survivor mentors meet mentees' emotional needs. And can you speak about how case management has needed to adapt in the pandemic to meet mentees' basic needs and kind of physical needs?
Yeah, there has been a lot to help out with during the pandemic, especially. We have many mentees working essential jobs right now because that's their only option to support themselves. I'm thinking of one of our mentees, Maria, who's a young mom. She's had to take extra hours at a nursing home, working with our elderly population. And she's had to navigate the anxiety of working in a place of such high exposure, as well as coming home and putting her family of older adults and her young son at risk. And in addition to that, working in a place that has to deal with the reality of grief and loss due to COVID. And that's just an example of one of our mentees. We have so many mentees doing so much right now. And so in the beginning of the pandemic, especially, we were able to get all of our mentees and families who need it, masks and PPE. We're still obviously providing that, but that was especially hard to get our hands on in the beginning. So that was one big thing that we made sure we were able to do. In addition to that, many of our mentees and their family members have lost their jobs or have been unable to work due to getting COVID. One of our mentees, Nicole, is 15, and she's been living with her foster family. Her foster mom has had cancer for a while and has been receiving intensive chemotherapy treatments. And then her foster father lost his job and was laid off due to COVID. So understandably, their bills quickly started piling up, and we were able to help financially in paying off some of those bills, as well as helping secure them and getting them connected with programs that, like financial assistance programs that would help them in the long term. So financially on our end, in the past 8 months, we've given over $8,500 in financial assistance that went towards rent and utility bills, electric bills, that kind of thing.
Okay. So in addition to the basic needs you just talked about, I know that
Lisa, can I interrupt you? Because I actually want to give one more example. Sorry.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so glad.
No,
yes.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there was a pause and then I couldn't tell. So go ahead.
And then I guess in addition to all of that, a lot of our families and our mentees over 18 have experienced housing instability and homelessness in this time, and especially with the eviction moratorium ending in Massachusetts, recently we're already seeing evictions hitting a lot of our families. But with housing and homelessness, I think of one of our mentees, Janelle, who came into our program when she was 13. It had been discovered that she was being sold by a pimp and was addicted to heroin. She was taken into the care of DCF and worked really closely with her mentor for years on her recovery from exploitation as well as substance use. And like we're all mentioning on this call, the recovery process is not linear. There's a lot of different parts to it. And Janelle recently turned 18, and something that we see with a lot of our mentees when they turn 18 is that they have been in the care of DCF for so long, and on their 18th birthday, they really want to try and do things on their own. And so Janelle, on her 18th birthday, decided to sign out of DCF, which is something that young people can do if they're, when they turn 18, they can receive services until their 22nd birthday. And so unfortunately, Janelle very quickly found herself without a place to sleep, and her mentor was able to help reconnect her with DCF. We were able to get her connected with a housing program that's a partner agency of ours. And we were also able to, in COVID times, a lot of housing programs are requiring a negative COVID test. So we had to get her emergency housing in a shelter, in a hotel as well. So in terms of that kind of emergency assistance, we've provided grocery store gift cards to a lot of our families, basic needs gift cards, all that. We have done just over $7,000 in grocery gift card assistance and emergency assistance. And in total, in the past 8 months, we've given out almost $25,000 in assistance. And what we see and what we know is that these needs are not going away, especially with the continued increase in numbers.
Thank you, and thank you for interrupting me so that you didn't miss that. So in addition to these basic needs, isolation's been hard for all of us. Can you talk about that piece?
Yeah, so at My Life, My Choice, we offer different groups for our mentees, which is a really important part of the recovery process, to connect and be with others who have similar experiences. And we were able to quickly shift and get our groups online. All of our mentees are paid for their time when they come to our groups, and we offer a few different kinds of groups. We have a GROW group, which is for young people who are 16 and older, to learn about independent living skills and transitioning to becoming successful adults. We have a young moms group, which we were actually able to get off the ground during the pandemic. And it was kind of under the leadership of our senior survivor mentor, Audrey, who had been trying to get this group going before the pandemic, but there were a lot of natural barriers that came up for our young moms, like transportation and childcare. And so we've found that doing this group virtually is actually better. So we offer support and community for our young moms, as well as resources and education. We have our leadership group, which has been running for years. It's a group that helps our young survivors find their voice and get involved in advocacy projects to fight commercial sexual exploitation of children. And then we have our summer jobs program, which Audrey has been doing for years. And we shifted to do that completely virtually this year as well. Our summer jobs program is a program where we hire our young people and do workshops that teach them job skills, expose them to different career paths, and involve them in leadership projects. I have a quick quote from one of our mentees who did the summer jobs program. She said, "Over the last month, this has been empowering. I've gained a lot of confidence in myself and the things I've been through. I'm not ashamed of it anymore, and I don't want to hide it. I feel empowered because I'm part of this group. Even in a pandemic, I got a family from summer jobs."
Good stuff. Lastly, you've talked a lot today about the challenges of these times. Have you also seen resiliency?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen so much resiliency from every single one of our mentees. We had many mentees graduate from middle and high school despite the sudden disruption in school and going virtual. We have one mentee, Tamika, who's been having a really tough time in the pandemic, but despite that, she started her sophomore year of her bachelor's degree this fall and just moved into her own apartment with roommates for the first time. We've seen our mentees get involved in the racial justice movement by attending protests and events, as well as doing projects through our leadership group and summer jobs. And then we also had an online voter registration event for our mentees to register to vote. And they were really excited to vote for the first time in this most recent presidential election. And I think above all, like, our mentees are survivors. So despite the relentless challenges and pain, they continue to show up with strength and resiliency and bravery and adaptability.
Well said, Olivia. Thank you. Lastly, I'm going to turn it to Audrey Morrissey. And Audrey, from when you were 16 to when you founded our mentoring program in 2004 to 2020, how has commercial sexual exploitation changed and what's remained the same?
Oh my goodness, I'm just so overwhelmed from the presenters. Everyone was so on point. And I just want to thank you ladies for that great information. And it kind of shows you how far I'm removed, right? For like as we grow and, and I just want to give my colleagues a shout out for just doing a great job today. And the difference is, of course, I'm an old chick and everybody knows that, and I'm all right with that. And I say that humbly because a lot of the women that when I was in the life as a teenager, a lot of the girls and a lot of the women are dead, right? And so I'm really, truly grateful that I survived. And, and I come from an era of street prostitution. I come from an era where if a child was missing from care, someone might have came through the area, which in Massachusetts we call the combat zone. And someone might have seen someone's child and be able to tell their parent, I saw your child on a street corner, or I saw your child in a strip club in the combat zone, right? So it was easier for family members to find their children, right? And what we know today is we speed it up. And even as I started doing this work at My Life, My Choice, even before, we know that it has gone indoors. So the difference is that it has gone indoors, right? The difference is it is harder for us to locate our children because they're not visible like we were visible when I was in the life. And so, I know here in Massachusetts, and I'm sure all across the country, there are ads after ads after ads. It's very, very hard to locate young people who are being sold online. And now there are so many different websites and so many different ways in which our children are being sold. But one thing I'll say for sure is that the violence hasn't changed. It is not safer because a child is in a hotel room. When I think of myself, I think of, at least when I was on the street, I was able to socialize with people, right? I was able to walk the block, right? When I think of a young person where a trafficker has put them in a hotel room, the trafficker is the only person that knows that that child is in that hotel room, and then a stream of adult men coming in and out and in and out and in and out buying that child. That's real scary for me. And I'm going to tell you, they're still being raped, beaten, robbed, and they're not going to run down to the lobby and say, hey, an exploiter has me selling myself in room 302 and a guy just raped me. That's not how it goes. I mean, the bottom line is that the difference now, when we speed it up to 2020, there are a lot more children being exploited because of the internet. It's like this secret society. And I want to say that it has become a multi-billion-dollar industry because it has made, let me tell you, when I was in the life, a buyer, certain people wouldn't come through the combat zone if they were prominent because they didn't want to be seen. With the internet, our children are placed in hotels all over. I went to a workshop at a conference where a researcher at that time, when Backpage was really big, studied Backpage. And I want to be real clear what his findings were, which shocked me, was that people think that these ads are in urban communities. What his research found that our children are in hotels in upper middle class white areas, period. So our kids are being sold all over the country, anywhere that there are hotels. I want to say that to date, at My Life, My Choice, I had just reached out to Lisa. The holidays are coming and getting the gifts ready for our kids. And I'm like, okay, how many gifts do we need? And when she ever said 170. Now that's to date. Those are kids that we're serving right now. Not to mention the kids that we've served since 2004. And how I began doing this work was through training. I encourage people, go on our website, look at when we're having our trainings for commercial sexual exploitation of children. How this mentoring program began was through training and informing people and giving people the tools to identify our youth. And through training, referrals began to come in. I founded the program in 2004. I'm the first survivor in Massachusetts to do this. To date, My Life, My Choice, I think, quote me, I might be wrong, 13 to 14 mentors we have, right? And so that tells you it hasn't gotten better since 2004. I need to tell you all, I just did an interview on Friday. We're still hiring even in a pandemic. The pandemic has not made cases go down. As a matter of fact, kids are with exploiters for a longer period of time with no escape because of the pandemic. There's a lot of child abuse, unreported child abuse going on because people are in lockdown and it's harder to have access to our children. And so I just encourage people to, their staff, make sure folks are trained, make sure people know what they're doing. My Life, My Choice, we offer so many trainings. Just go on our website, check it out. Nothing has changed. The pain is the same. Our children are still, from when I was in the life, is still traumatic, 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 traumatic. I have trauma. Some of the trauma I've healed from, and some of it I will take to my grave, will never heal. And so in that case, nothing has changed from when I was in the life to the children that are in the life today. The trauma remains the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey. So we have 8 minutes, and you guys have sent in some great questions, so I'm going to turn them to various people. So first, Shay, there are some questions, and probably really important ones going into Thanksgiving. Well, except people should not be seeing family at Thanksgiving, but if you are, even by Zoom, suggestions on how to have meaningful, non-contentious discussions with people who are unwittingly perpetrating false, harmful conspiracy narratives on social media. What can you say in person? What can you say in social media when these folks are kind of perpetuating this? And how do we help people apply critical thinking to false narratives?
Yes, you can help people. So I think the easiest way to engage someone and not polarize them, you want to bring them into the conversation, right? You want to validate them. Oh my gosh, yes. Human sex trafficking is a huge problem, especially when it involves children. Start there, right? Like you're validating their point. And I think it's really also important to loop back to saying like, some of these conspiracy theories have grown out of actual factual events. Epstein is, the biggest one, especially now that Ghislaine Maxwell is facing trial. So you can talk about that and say, hey, there's these documentaries on Netflix. You should try to check them out. R. Kelly is another big one, right? It's been very sensationalized, and there are nuggets of truth that these conspiracy theorists have glommed onto and sort of folded the narrative around sensationalizing and blowing up what is in fact true, and they've kind of made it palatable. So one thing that hit the news that I think is really interesting is that there was these U.S. Marshals were engaged along with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in rounding up and looking for missing kids. And one of them that came out in August was that was partially true, was that 39 children were recovered missing from the state of Georgia. That was in fact true. There were 39 missing children from the state of Georgia that had been recovered by the U.S. Marshals. What it morphed into, so again, it's this little nugget of truth, and how to bring it back around to keeping the truth on point is saying, hey, I saw that same thing. I saw the press release put out by the US Marshals. Only 2, in fact, of those children were found together. There weren't 39 children found all at the same time in the back of a double-wide trailer who were being trafficked. I went to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and I tried to see, where those kids had been reported missing from. Most of them were from family, custodial type of situations. And so it's just a way of saying, like, yes, I was very interested in that too. And going to credible sources, right? The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, going directly to the media in Georgia, because if 39 missing kids had really been found in the back of the double wide trailer, it would have been on the front page of every single major news outlet. Every single major news outlet, from the Chicago Tribune to the Washington Post to the New York Times to the Kansas City Star, and it wasn't. So we just need to, like, I always start with saying, like, wow, yes, trafficking is a huge problem. And so there are some nuggets of truth, and it was really important to me to get to the bottom of it. Also, if you have connections in your own jurisdiction with law enforcement, I know that some people reached out directly to Homeland Security agents that we all work with, or FBI agents, because there was a concern about the COVID mask and that kids were going to get snatched in the parking lot at Walmart, especially if they were wearing a mask to protect them from COVID. And I can assure you that here in my jurisdiction, as well as other jurisdictions where I have friends in law enforcement, that's not true. None of it's true. So I actually go to the source, right? And say, hey guys, are you finding, reports of missing kids wearing COVID masks, snatched from the Walmart parking lot? And just a way of sort of like looping it back, but being positive in your delivery. And that's how you get people to start to think critically about, hey, where am I getting my information from? And am I vetting it?
Okay, Shay, that was awesome. And I feel like we could talk for another hour. And there are some great questions here. We have time for one more. And then I'm going to kind of, those of yours that we can't get to, I'm going to direct you to where you can get that information. Very quickly, in quick bullet points, what's the most important thing to teach school staff with regards to awareness from our panel? Tina, give me something that you feel like is really important for school staff to know.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of just one thing, and I'm going to
Start with one.
Well, what I would say is that school staff are seeing these kids more than probably anyone else, because, and then I get, granted, with the pandemic, things are looking a little differently, but kids are in school for the majority of the day, we're hoping, right? And so I think, if we're looking at, like, are they in school or not? Like, are there lots of, absences? Are they, in terms of the gang involvement? I know we don't see this as much, but colors or flags, are we seeing, discussions about, or seeing in there, talking about boyfriends that are older, or talking about people connections with people that maybe are older that you haven't seen them? Are they isolating from people that they are normally in connection with? Or, just, there's so many things to kind of know.
All
but
good.
You guys are seeing the kids more and more, I think, because the majority of the school day is spent with school staff. So we hope.
Really important key idea that you are on the front lines, and very important. I'm going to throw in one really quick one to Sheryl. Someone asked how virtual groups have been going, and as they're having challenges seeing their at-youth struggle with how our prevention groups are working in this virtual environment. Sheryl, can you send them any inspiration? I know you ran one over the summer with our youth. Any words of wisdom on that as prevention specialist?
Yeah, I would say that the youth are really resilient, and they're this is their world, technology. So I think they will enjoy themselves with the prevention group online. And when I did it in the summer, it was great. It was great.
So, and if folks have additional questions, they can reach out to Sheryl, they can reach out to other members of the prevention team. If you direct any questions directly to mlmcinfo@jri.org, it'll get to the right person. There's also questions around housing. We do not provide housing, but we do work in collaboration with housing programs. Please reach out for more questions. And someone opened the door to have a conversation about decriminalization. We support the equality model, as somebody quickly emailed back, and we're happy to have a much longer conversation about that at a different time. So I'm going to turn it back to Kaylin, who you can't see, who's going to do one final poll for you to please fill out quickly before you leave. We greatly, greatly appreciate you taking this time to be with us. You are our community all over the country. We need you desperately as we go forward in this work. Please stay in touch, and please take care and be healthy and safe. Thank you. And again, I cannot see the poll, so I'm assuming, can anybody see the poll?
I keep getting them. Yeah. I
Okay,
see
so
them.
they're up for other people, just not me. Okay, good. And Kaylin, I assume you will kind of end us when that comes in for folks. And we are loving
I
your
can't see it.
messages in chat. Okay, so some folks cannot see it. Kaylin?
I can't see it, Robin.
It's running, and it looks like 100% of our votes are in.
Wait a
Okay.
minute.
So most
Great.
people want to hear about everything, but the most popular response for what they want to learn more about is preventing commercial sexual exploitation of children.
Good stuff. That's what we'll
That's
go
what we
next.
do. That's what we do.
Thank you so, so much. Again, we appreciate you coming. And take care of yourselves. Thank you, Shay.
Thank you, Shay.
For coming all this
Thank
way,
you so
and to our
much.
team.
Aubrey, it's Robin. I'm going to be calling you shortly.
Okay, Robin. Bye.
Bye.